Hi guys, welcome back to my lair. Today I wanted to do kind of a fun topic. Harry Potter's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. Mainly because I think I wasn't like so into it as a child, but I kind of recently got more into it after rereading all the books, and yeah, as I was rereading them I couldn't help but just like type characters as I go along, so I thought it would be fun to type some of the characters today. I do want to say that, you know, fictional characters are hard to type, and a lot of the characters could probably maybe go several different ways in terms of typing. These are just sort of my thoughts, so I would really love to hear what you guys think about it. And okay, let's get into it. Alright, let's start off with Harry. Harry was kind of a difficult one for me to type, and it seems like a lot of people either think he's ISTP or ISFP. You see the introversion in him for sure. I think he has a lot more inner dialogue. And of course this is, you know, biased because he's the main character as well, but I think there's more going on in his head than he always lets on to other people. And I think he processes things internally first and then externally. And I do think he is an SP, like an auxiliary SE user, especially whenever he's in a battle with like Voldemort or the Death Eaters. You can see that he is very quick to react and to think. I would type Harry as ISTP. Yeah, so I don't think his inner dialogue is much about his ethical principles or what he values or what he doesn't value. It seems a lot more like a rational, analytical, internal process to me. And that kind of comes off with his general, the kind of vibe we get from his personality. I think he's much more stoic and kind of probably hard for others to read. I think an FI Dom would be kind of more bubbly and lively, and probably their emotions would come to the surface more. I think Harry, it takes a long time for him to become angry, and he does eventually become angry, but I think by the time it boils over and explodes, it's been a long time coming, and I think he kept most of that to himself. So why I would put Harry more on the TI-FE axis, for example, in the 5th book, when Harry and all of his friends, or part of, you know, Dumbledore's army, went with him to the Ministry, he was reluctant. He didn't necessarily want others to risk themselves getting hurt. And he demonstrated this to them. He, I think, outright said no to them several times. And I think this is more a demonstration of FE and showing other people that he wants them to be safe. If he himself is an FI user, if he was an FI user, would want to go and fight, you know, the Death Eaters, then I think he would also maybe respect other people's rights as individuals to decide if they wanted to or not and accompany him. Okay, let's go on to Ron. And now I'm starting with the second character that I also had difficulty typing. Okay, I would say Ron is ESFP. Ron is very kind of laid back, go with the flow, enjoys making people laugh. To me, this is one sort of set of traits that could correlate with being an SE dominant. I think he just enjoys living in the moment a lot, and he can enjoy other sensory pleasures, like we see him eating a lot and enjoying that. And he's probably one of the most friendly characters. I think he can get along with like many people with ease. I think that's another kind of ability of an SE Dom. They're very adaptable to any sort of, you know, situation they find themselves in. Now for Ron, I could also go ESTP, but the reason I said ESFP is because I don't think he has FE. I don't think he has like any consideration for how sometimes his actions can affect others. And that doesn't mean that anyone who acts poorly isn't, you know, can't have FE, but I think there are some characters, actually, well, I'll talk about them later in this video, that probably can be also insensitive, but I think they have that awareness that they are, and I think that's more FE. And with Ron, I really think he's quite oblivious with how he comes off sometimes. So I can't see him as an FE user. And actually this could be a sign of FI over TE, because he values maybe his own value system more than how his value system affects other things in a TE way. And I think we'll see the distinction with Hermione next, where she has TE over FI. So yeah, I think ESFP captures the laid-back quality of Ron. Although maybe I should say that perhaps he's a bit of an underdeveloped ESFP. I do think some ESFPs probably will have maybe a more mature FI and even more mature TE development. And I think Ron, Ron might not be there yet in the books. Okay, let's move on to Hermione. So I say Hermione is ISTJ, and I think most people will probably agree she's either ISTJ or ESTJ. So I said ISTJ because I think her FI is probably a bit stronger, and I don't think it's in that repressed position. I think it's probably in the third position. To me, I don't know, Hermione is like such an obvious kind of like caricature almost of like an ISTJ. I think her SI is quite obvious. She is very exceptional at being able to just take in copious amounts of information and just remember it. I think that's a trademark of an SJ, especially in ISJ, and that SI Dom. And yeah, so she's able to take in all this information and critically analyze it and use it when it needs to be used. And I think this is her TE coming out. She is very effective at doing things and getting what she wants. And I think that's a hallmark of, you know, a healthy TE user. She can be kind of abrasive and cold, another hallmark, unfortunately, of a TE user. So unlike some of the FJs that we see in the series, who will motivate people by trying to inspire them and trying to elevate their emotions and get them to respond to that emotional level, she tries to usually motivate, for example, Harry and Ron to do their homework by just hitting them with all these cold hard facts that they're just going to fail or whatever, and which probably actually, you know, emotionally makes them feel worse and might be kind of counterproductive. But I think her using her TE, she's just trying to logically show them like, okay, you guys need to, you know, keep up with your homework. So yeah, so the reason I think she's ISTJ is because I think her FI, we kind of see her grow into it. I don't remember what book it is, but when she, you know, goes off and does her little spew thing, you know, I don't remember what it stands for. Her whole house health campaign to get them, you know, proper rights. And I think we can kind of contrast her FI with Harry's FE here, because Hermione, I think, just does the house elf thing not because there's any like immediate external need to do so. Well, okay, I mean, yeah, the house elves are suffering. I don't want to I don't want to say that you know, they're not, but I think it's in terms of like what she's facing in her life, you know, she doesn't necessarily have to go out of her way and do that, but I think there is you know, something strikes a chord with her internally, and there's this internal motivation to go out of her way and do something. Whereas with, for example, Harry's FE, I think he only acts when there's an external situation where he doesn't want people risking their lives for him sometimes. So it's more of something that he's implementing externally in real time, and not something that I think he had prior kind of preconceptions and motivations that stirred him to act, like Hermione, I would say. And then we can contrast this with Hermione's TE-FI with Ron's FI-TE. And I think Ron probably, he just doesn't see the point of this whole house elf thing. He thinks that the house elves want this and that they're fine, you know, want their current subordination and they don't care about it, and he doesn't see why, you know, he has to change it. And I think that's his kind of FI value system, thinking that, you know, that, yeah, that the house elves are okay, there's no need to necessarily act upon it. But I think Hermione, with higher up TE, I think she believes more that she has, you know, that power to kind of actually influence things and change things. Okay, on to Ginny. Ginny, I think, is ESTP. she has this very self-assured quality about her that I think you have with ESTPs. I think a lot of times in dialogue you see her standing up for herself with a lot of ease. Often J.K. Rowling uses the adjective coolly when she's speaking, like blah blah blah, Ginny said coolly. And I think that just kind of demonstrates that she's able to react very quickly on her feet, and I think from a rational standpoint too, without getting too kind of emotionally involved. So to me that really seems like SE and TI in conjunction. And I think you have that kind of SE exploratory nature with her. But for example, like we learn that when she turns out to be like a decent or actually pretty good Quidditch player, it's because she snuck her brother's brooms and practiced flying around on them or something without her parents or even like Fred and George knowing, which is pretty impressive. So she definitely has that kind of urge just to do things for herself and kind of without regard to necessarily the rules. Another example of this is when she gets kind of sucked into using the diary, into Tom Riddle kind of manipulating her. I think someone with higher like NI or SI might have heeded the warning of, you know, Arthur when he said don't trust anything where you can't see where its head is. Yeah, someone with that higher introverted perceiving function might kind of acknowledge that and might be a little bit wary of using that book, but I think Ginny just needed to kind of explore it for herself, much like an SE Dom would. I do think you see that she's an FE user as well, because even when her and Harry go through some hard times and they have to break up, I think like FE users are, she's good at sort of containing her emotional urges and being able to present what she wants to present to the other person. Now I want to contrast that with Fred and George, who I would type as ENTPs. Although with Fred and George, I could go either way. I could type them ESTP as well. But I think when you kind of contrast them with Ginny, you can maybe see the difference in their perceiving axes. I think Fred and George are much more kind of witty when it comes to using language, and I think that's more of an NESI axis thing. Of course, as ENTPs, they are very inventive. They invent all these crazy joke shop items. This could be another reason why they would be on the NE side versus SE. I think they imagine up the crazy far-fetched ideas first and then see if they can actually work them out in reality or not. So it seems like they might be, yeah, coming up with kind of these conceptual, abstract kind of, you know, ideas, and then seeing if there's any way they can make it actually work and have an actual product, where I would suspect maybe an SE user would kind of play around and experiment with the physical things and see what they can create out of that first, and then maybe try to fit them into some sort of specific product categories. But I think, you know, Fred and George thought of these product categories first and then tried to figure out a way to actually manifest them in reality. So that could be an sign of an intuitive. So here I wanted to show how Fred and George as FE users, who are obviously kind of, you know, they tease people a lot, and to the point where it can be even cruel sometimes, but to the people who know them well, I think they understand that it's sort of a sign of like affection when they do that. As opposed to Hermione, for example, if she tells someone off, it can be quite harsh. But with Fred and George, it's also it's always kind of playful. Like, you know that they're just trying to manipulate with your emotions a little bit. You know, they're not dominant FEs or auxiliary FEs. They have their FEs, you know, it's down there, so it's probably not the most refined way to show affection for sure, but I think it's typical of kind of like an ENTP. And generally just kind of teasing, I think, could be related to NETI. Not to say that like anyone who teases someone is like an ENTP or something, but I think the way in which they do it, you know, in this kind of trollish way, or like, you know, devil's advocate kind of way, where they just want to test people, because I think NE can see probably an argument for any sort of conceptual thing. They can, you know, they can find a way to explain anything. And I think TI is that way too, that introverted logical process. They can probably manipulate their internal logic to construct some sort of argument for anything. So I think they they like to test people and play with and toy with people the way sometimes I think you see ENTPs just doing just for fun. Just because it's kind of like a little mental challenge for them. Compared to Ginny, they kind of have a little bit more of a fanciful, inventive, kind of dreamy vibe compared to Ginny, who's kind of much more self-assured and practical. And so that's kind of, that general vibe is why I would say Ginny's ESTP, the twins are ENTP. Okay, let's go to Luna. Luna, I would say, is INFP. And she's kind of like, again, such a caricature of an INFP. Okay, but let's go into why. A lot of times she just says exactly what's on her mind. And this can be, I wouldn't say necessarily all FI DOMs would necessarily do this, but I think probably a lot do. You know, as long as whatever she is saying, I think, is in accordance with her kind of internal value system, she's okay with saying it. And it can come off kind of strange sometimes. Other times even like a slightish, a little bit with a bluntness. But definitely not the same bluntness you get with TJs, like with Hermione. It's more of kind of like an aloof, disconnected kind of bluntness, right? So she's very much in her internal value system, and I don't think she's necessarily considering how it's received by others. But she just says what she wants to say and she's perfectly okay with it. As for NE, I think she always kind of creates explanations for certain happenings based on these imaginary creatures that she believes are real, which, I mean, we don't really know which creatures are real or not real in the universe, but it seems like most other witches or wizards kind of are like, I don't know if there's any evidence that those creatures exist. So I think this again is intuition. It's like she creates these kind of arguments and reasonings for things on this abstract level, and where there's actually like no evidence that these things could actually, these little creatures actually exist and they're actually doing these things that she says that they're doing. So yeah, to me that's a sign of an intuitive. And just her kind of general vibe, you know, she's a little bit aloof and kind of disconnected from reality and kind of very daydreamy. Just that general picture that Rowling paints of her is very kind of, yeah, stereotypical INFP. And I know I kind of said maybe some negative reasons why she might be INFP, but like I think her FI is very strong. I think she does have a lot of kindness to her. And she's very loyal as well. I think she cares deeply for her friends, more than maybe they even understand until they go to her room and see that there are like all those posters of them up on the wall. Again, a kind of a hallmark of like an FI user. It's like she really values them and that's what's important to her. It's not so much about, you know, expressing those emotions or making sure that those people receive those intended emotions the way an FE user would want. Okay, so I kind of went through, you know, a few of the main characters, but I have actually typed, like, I would say most of the characters in the series. So if you guys want me to go through some more of the characters, yeah, let me know in the comments. And let me know if you guys agree with my typing or not. Like I said, it's hard to type fictional characters. So I'm sure there could be, you know, valid arguments for them to be other types as well. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Thanks for watching.